September 11, 2001. This program is also a tribute to those who answered the call of those who needed help and those who answered the call of a nation at war. At this time, please stand for the presentation of the colors by the Marine Corps Junior ROTC program and the singing of the national anthem by the Kubasaki Combined Choir. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you a former Principal of the Year and your principal here at Kubasaki High School, Mr. James Strait.
All right, good morning. Good morning. Students, I know we're a little louder than that. Good morning. That's what I'm talking about. And welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning to remember and reflect on September 11, 2001, attacks in the United States. I would like to extend a special welcome to our first responders, all our students, staff, parents, and our virtual audience. On September 11, 2001, 19 suicide bombers linked with the Islamic extremist group called Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airliners and carried out suicide attacks against targets in the United States. Two planes were flown into the World Trade Center towers in New York City. A third plane hit the Pentagon just outside of Washington, D.C. And the fourth plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. These terrorist attacks became known as 9/11, which is how the American date of September 11th is written. The attacks resulted in the deaths of 2,977 people, The victims include 246 passengers and crew on the 4 planes, 206 in New York City, both in the towers and on the ground, and 125 individuals in the Pentagon. Men and women and children from more than 90 countries died in these attacks. I ask you to reflect on these victims. What had they done that morning before work? Did they eat breakfast? Had they taken a moment to see the beauty that surrounds them? I'm hoping they each had time to do what made them happy that morning or the weeks prior to that day. I now ask you to reflect on yourself. Do you do your best every day? Do you take time to say nice things to others? Do you live each day to its fullest? I hope you answer yes to at least one of these and work towards living each and every day to the fullest. What matters in our journey and that we make good choices every chance we get. September 11th is now remembered as Patriot Day in the United States. This is a national day of mourning to remember the victims of the terrorist attacks. Today is also the National Day of Service. Let us each do something kind in honor of each victim on September 11th attacks. An essay by the late naturalist Stephen J. Scholl said, "In a time of sadness, we have a responsibility to remember how people respond with countless acts of kindness and generosity. Good and kind people outnumber all others by 1,000 to 1. Every incident of bad was balanced by 10,000 acts of kindness, too often unnoticed and invisible as the ordinary efforts of a vast majority. It is our responsibility to respond daily with acts of kindness, big or small, each count. I know the students, parents, and staff of Kubasaki will continue to have generosity and show that the world, that our community will always make a difference for the good. Thank you again for your time this morning. I hope you keep these thoughts in your mind as you hear more today and the days to follow about 9/11. We are honored to have you as part of our community, Kubasaki, all the way. Cool. So at this time, we're going to play a short video. It's about 10 minutes, and it's going to bring you back to what happened on that horrible day back in New York City and the Pentagon in Pennsylvania.
Floors were taken out, and there's more explosions right now. People are running.
Hold on just a moment. We got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Right, oh my God, another plane has just hit another building, flew right into the middle of it. Explosion. My God, it's right in the middle of the building.
You can read up from under your seat. Open your book up to lesson 60 on page 153. At the count of 3, everyone should be on page 153.
Mom, another plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. Another plane hit a jet, a jumbo jet. I'm so scared. I'm leaving. Oh, no, don't Megan. You can't. Bye. I love you. Megan. Mom, I'm getting the phone. Megan, please wait for me.
We do have some videotape of the second plane, and you can see it there.
Where? I didn't see it. Oh, whoa.
This is crazy.
We're under attack.
Going into buildings.
From our vantage point, yeah, clearly difficult to tell.
We're under attack.
What type of plane that is, but it's a horrific scene.
That's
And
All right, we've just been told, also, Michael, sorry, the New York Stock Exchange is being evacuated, as is, I'm sure, much of Wall Street, if not all of it, as much as possible. But the New York Stock Exchange has suspended trading for the moment.
war.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're looking at live pictures of the Pentagon where there is billowing smoke. Jim Miklashevsky just reported that he heard an explosion, and right now we're looking at an aerial view of the Pentagon.
The Pentagon has been evacuated, and the White House is being evacuated.
However, I'd be very, very cautious.
All of the airports across the country have been shut down. All flights have been canceled for another 7 hours, which is about 5 o'clock Eastern time. And then we'll reignite there. We'll take a look what's going on after that. The probability of extension, as they call that, is high.
Take two. Take two and two. One. This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents, and you can see the two towers. A huge explosion now raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
It's coming down on me. Here it comes. Getting behind a car. Anthony, you okay?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Watch out, watch out.
I'll tell you that I can't see that second tower, but there was a cascade of sparks and fire, and now it looks almost like a mushroom cloud explosion, this huge billowing smoke in the second tower. This was the second of the two towers hit.
Now this is what it looked like moments ago. My God.
The remains of a airplane crash over on Lambertsville Road, and probably a terrorist bomb on board blew up. I don't know anything more than that. That's what I heard on the scanner. I just saw the smoke come up, and the explosion shook the house clear over here, and we are, 15 miles from Lambertsville.
In Washington, there is a large fire at the Pentagon. The Pentagon has been evacuated. And there's, you can see, perhaps the second tower, the front tower, the top portion of which is collapsing. Good Lord. There are no words. We have a report that a 747 is down in Pennsylvania, and that remains unconfirmed at this point, and so we will check on that.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly
terrorist acts. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
So at this time, okay, at this time we have asked two teachers to come up here at this time to share that day, what they were doing and what happened during that time. So I'm asking Ms. White and Ms. Kincaid to please approach the podium.
Good morning. When American Airlines Flight 11 was flown into the North Trade Tower, I was listening to a New York City DJ, Howard Stern, on the radio. New Yorkers had no clue what was happening. Minutes later, I entered American Airlines headquarters, my workplace, and saw a TV had been pulled out into the aisle of our office area. My coworkers asked, "Have you seen this?" The breaking newscast mentioned a small aircraft which had been flown into the North Trade Tower. My team always worried whenever a plane crashed or was in an accident. As one of the members of the emergency response team, I always had my go bag ready and was prepared to deploy to the site to assist with surviving passengers and or families of the fatalities. Minutes later, a coworker shared news from flight dispatch. It's not a small plane, it's one of ours. Hijacked was the whispered word. Within the hour, we knew it was Flight 11. Our plane was not responding and was no longer on radar. And I saw the second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, hit the South Tower on live TV. Several of us screamed in shock as we realized it was not an accident, but a terrorist attack. Two planes is not an accident. Then we heard about the Pentagon, another American Airlines plane, Flight 77. Our phones started going off and we were told to prepare for deployment tomorrow morning. All planes nationwide in U.S. airspace were immediately grounded. On Wednesday, September 12th, special permission was granted for one plane each for American and United Airlines emergency response teams to go to the outbound location. It was very eerie walking in the terminal. There were no passengers. There were no planes taxiing or taking off. There were no baggage handlers loading bags and no movement on the tarmac. Our 737 was escorted by fighter jets to Boston, the originating city of American Airlines Flight number 11. And we were told that if our plane deviated from our flight plan, we would be shot down. This was no joke. We were immediately quarantined at the Hyatt Hotel, where the FBI was questioning all of the family members of the passengers. The hunt for the terrorists had begun. Now my job, helping family members of the passengers and the crew, the very first victims of the 9/11 attacks began. This was my 9/11 experience.
everybody. So those of you who have had my class know that I tend to have a lot of stories. This story isn't mine, it's my husband's. My husband is a professional hunter. And on 9/11, he was in the Gila wilderness. A wilderness is an area where there are no motorized vehicles allowed. He had taken a mule train in for a 7-day hunt. They were running out of food, and so Cookie, one of the outfitters' cooks, went in to bring them food, and he came in and he said, "I have good news and I have bad news." He said, "The good news is I bought food from my personal stores for you. The bad news is that America is under terrorist attack." Now, my husband and his best friend had been wondering what was going on because the Gila wilderness is right in the track where airplanes go into Los Angeles. And so generally there's a lot of airplane traffic there, but they hadn't seen any for about 2 days. So when this news hit camp, it turns out 2 of the hunters had wives that worked in the Twin Towers. So they packed up camp and got out as soon as they could. It turns out that the hunters' wives had been called away to an emergency meeting somewhere in Washington, D.C., and so they were nowhere near the Twin Towers at the time, but it was still rough for them. And that was my husband's 9/11 experience.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing your story and your experience on that fateful day. Now, the Kubasaki Advanced Choir will sing the song Unsung Hero by Joseph M. Martin.
Ms. Wall and your awesome choir, thank you so much for that moving and emotional song. At this time, everyone please stand and give a standing ovation to the people who laid it all on the line that day and do it every day. Ladies and gentlemen, our first responders. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason that you are here because most of your parents decided to defend this nation after the attack. Your parents, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Gosh, this has turned out to be a very emotional and moving day for us. There's no other group of people who have made more sacrifices for our country than the people here on this stage in front of you, our first responders and your parents. A lot of parents responded to the attack on 9/11 by joining the armed forces of the United States, and that's the reason that most of you are here now. There are a lot of stories, and I strongly encourage you to talk to your parents, talk to other adults who were here at that time. You'll be amazed at some of the stories that they have to share. Thank you so much for today's presentation. At this time, Mr. Strait is going to present Laurel. Thank you for everyone who showed up.
All right, let's give them another big round of applause. Again, parents, first responders, again, thank you for your service. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come share this experience with us again. So we appreciate your support and the community support and all you do for our kids in our community. Again, thank you again. Students, I know it's time to get to class, but I know you guys weren't born at this time. So hopefully you take this time this week to, have that conversation with your parents. Because as you can see, a lot of people are still suffering. It's been 20-some years, but we're still can remember the towers coming down and a lot of families that are still suffering through this. So again, take time this week, to discuss this with your teachers and your parents. So hopefully you have a good rest of the day, but thanks again for being quiet and listening, because this is an important thing that we don't want to forget and we will never forget. So at this time, we're going to have the first responders and the parents that stand fast on the stage. And the students, I'm going to have you start heading back to class. So at this time, I would like the seniors to head through the back doors first.